welcome back to my channel. Today I have a book review on Your Story, How to Write It So Others Will Want to Read It by Joanne Fedler. Um, it took me very little time to finish this book due to how it's put together. Very, very short chapters, like a couple of pages, maybe. Some of them not even that. But I loved this book, okay? This book takes you through all of the questions, all of the doubts, all of the unknown when it comes to writing your memoir, your story, right? It's the story of your life, and it involves real people in your life. And sometimes that can be a little bit tricky, right? There is one chapter in here, Should I Wait for My Parents to Die? And it's basically, we get it. You're a nice person. You don't want to hurt anybody, but you need to tell your story, right? Well, Joanne gives us several different ways to do that. Ask permission from the family member if that is possible. If they don't want to give their permission, simply write the story without their part in it. Although to me that's kind of cheating because it all plays in, okay? Write a similar kind of story, but change important facts, working thematically rather than factually. Use a pseudonym if it's published, okay? Change details to protect the identity of certain family members. You could change their name. You could refer to them by a nickname, that they're not known by, so that people know who you're referring to, but none of their private details are displayed, right? Write your life story as a fiction or fictionalize parts of it and alert the reader up front, saying something like based on a true story, largely based on events that took place. I don't know if I agree with that. Our story is not made up. It's real things. So to me, I need to write it as I need to write it. And further down on the page, it says, don't confuse writing your story with getting published. And that goes to one of the main things on writing your memoir is write it for you first, okay? Get it off your chest, blah, all onto the pages, so your story is out, okay? And once you've completed a manuscript, you can start thinking about ways of sharing your story that are safe, legal, palatable, and manageable for you. There's a big difference between what you bear on the page and what you share, okay? You cannot make sharing decisions until you've done all the bearing first. If you don't get that part done, you don't have to worry about sharing, which makes sense. Putting the cart before the horse, right? You need to pour it all out before you pare it back. Think about the right things at the right times. Don't preempt, assume, or imagine a future that isn't here yet. That is very important to remember. When I first thought about writing a memoir, that was it. That was it. Write it as if no one else is going to read it. Just write it for you. Okay. Then once you get the first draft done, then you can go over it again and do some editing and revisions, because ultimately, if you're looking to publish your book, you need to make it a little bit different format for the reader, because you want to take your personal story and relay that to them, but do it in such a way that they can apply it to their life too, possibly. because after all, that's what I'm writing my memoir for. I am writing it to share some hard-won knowledge that I've gained through life thus far. Okay. Um, Hoping that somebody in a similar situation to what I've been through can glean some survival skills, can get some encouragement that if I can do it, they can too. So in a way, you need to tell your truth and relay it to a universal truth, okay? Something that other people can apply to their situation as well. So you can't lock it up tight. You need to allow them the room to see themselves as the main protagonist and see that there is a way to get through what they're going through in order to make it useful to them. And you have to write it in such a way that it's engaging for them. They'll want to keep reading it. They get to know you, and they care, and they want to see how things turned out. Especially if they're going through something similar, they are going to be on the edge of their seat wondering if there is a way out of this. All right. Okay, I am writing my memoir right now. I'm working on it. And this book was perfect. Exactly what I needed to get me through the next chunk of things to do. I did buy this book used, okay, and it is great. I mean, it perfect, right? I did come across one spot that has highlighter on it. My sister is going to laugh at this because she's a published author of educational books. And we talk about this all the time in that you can procrastinate anything by reading books about how to do something, right? And the highlighted part, the one highlighted part in this book, I need to read this book first. And the highlighted part says, the question you should be asking yourself right now is whether reading this book is your own personal form of procrastination or resistance. Yeah. You could read endlessly about how to write without ever actually writing. If you really want to write, shouldn't you toss this book aside and get some words down? Point. I did need to read this book. But now that I've done that, now it's time to really get down to some writing. As I said, this is a great book. She gives us lots of input into how to handle things like people in your story are still alive and will probably be reading it if it ever gets published. How do you deal with that? Well, as I said, there were several ways. There's imposter syndrome. I'm not really a writer, I haven't written anything. Well, if you don't start, you won't be, right? So you have to get over yourself in that way. You have to write it as if nobody else is going to read it and just get it out there. Once you have a completed first draft manuscript, then you can get on with the act of writing, because that is where the real work comes in. Refining things for the reader. You have to have a reader in mind. Your target audience. Who are you hoping will get something out of this book? And you have to refine your writing that way to allow them to see what you're trying to get across to them. So for buying a used book, number one. Number two, the highlighting at that particular point is is comical. of all the highlighting, that was the perfect place to highlight for me. Um, it answered a lot of questions. It's very quick to read due to the short chapter length, etc. It's also very easy to look up if you have a specific problem, because there are content list. Okay, so if you read it through once and put it on your shelf, and then if you run into an issue, pull it down, and there's like thoughts, trust, triggers, techniques, then what? You know, appendix, urgent books to help you learn the craft. You know, there's a note to the writer. It's great resource for writing your memoir. Out of 5 stars, I would not hesitate to give this 4 3/4 stars. Okay. Um, it's about memoirs. It's about my story, right? It's very focused on what I need to know. It is put together really well. It's got a lot of suggestions and examples on what she's trying to show you, so you can really easily understand it. It walks you through how to put your memoir together so others are going to want to read it, which is ideal. That's that's the first thing you flounder about when you're trying to write a memoir, is like, how do I do this? I don't know. But her main thing is read a lot of memoirs, see how others have done it, kind of get a feel for it, because if you haven't written a memoir before, you're going to want to do that, to see what works. Okay. Now, you can't steal their story because it's about your story, but you can see how they put the things together, how they work out what the theme is. And sometimes you're not going to know the theme of your memoir until you start writing. So, this has answered a lot of questions for me. I'm really, really glad my sister put me onto this book, and she did put me onto this one. She said, you got to read this one. So I did. And thank you, Karen. Anyway, I can't tell you enough good things about this book. I'm really happy that I bought it. I'm really happy I read it, and I now have it in my library as a resource for writing my memoir. And I feel a whole lot more inspired to write my memoir now because I have this backing me. And that's about all I can say. Like, I highly recommend this book. If you are writing your memoir, get a hold of this one. Okay, you won't regret it. It's got some really great insight in it, things that I didn't even think of, but as soon as I read it, I was, oh yeah, you know, there is that, and what about this? And it's great. Anyway, so thanks very much for watching and for staying through to the end. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.